The whole country, basically, other than North Dakota, has been in a very deep recession. 49 different states of budgetary misery are happening right now. But here's a simple test. We will call it the Rick Scott test. A simple test for determining whether or not whether your quality of life and your share of the American dream is going to shrivel significantly this year for a real economic reason, or just because you have a bad governor. We call this the Rick Scott test because newly elected Florida Governor Rick Scott didn't just use a state budget deficit to justify cutting public education down to the bone and through it. He didn't say, oh, our state deficit is so bad, I've got to kill education to make the deficit better. No, Rick Scott gets the bad governor test named after him because Rick Scott found a way to make huge, devastating cuts to education in a way that does not help the state's budget deficit at all. Rick Scott has just announced his new budget in Florida. It takes more than $1.7 billion out of the public schools. And instead of putting that money back into the budget gives it away in corporate and property tax breaks. So K through 12 education gets absolutely eviscerated in the state of Florida. And the money that is saved by the state no longer spending the money on the schools doesn't close the state budget gap at all. It leaves it roughly exactly as is and instead gives the saved money away in the form of tax cuts. So you get all of the pain and none of the gain. Is your state about to become a much worse place to live because of an actual economic shortfall in your state? Or is your state about to become a much worse place to live because it's just what your governor wants? It is the Rick Scott test. It's empirical. Tax cuts for dummies.